criteria. We're using the same purchasing process through Sourcewell, national firm. This comes a McNeilus truck. It's a Mack chassis and built the way we would want them, coming from McNeilus Truck Manufacturing Company. They're out of Georgia. The price was $266,596, and this was under the amount that we had budgeted for the piece of equipment. We'd like to recommend purchase if you would like to do so.
Any questions of Mr. Harris? Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Lowry moves approval of Mr. Merchant seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry.
I noticed where it had a rear view mirror. I thought that, or a rear view camera. I thought that would be neat on a truck to be able to look out the back. Thank you.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And Resolution 802 is approved unanimously. We've now come to our council reports time. Does any member of council have information for the good of the city or the council?
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The South Main Street Neighborhood Association met yesterday, hadn't met since this COVID-19 started, really since January. We met outside because we wanted to social distance. We had over 25 people that came to the meeting, and I just want to thank Chief Rourke because Officer Atkinson came and did an excellent job in just explaining how things work, and we are continuing to partner with our police department to combat crime in that area. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? City Manager's report. Mr. McCormick.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and members of council, as you know, we met last time. We told you we were All-America City finalists, which means we're in the top 20 in the nation, vying for the top 10 spot. So just happy to report that we made our presentation yesterday, and we feel very good about it, but we'll know tomorrow night. They kind of keep us in suspense until then. But do want to thank all of our community partners, and hopefully there'll be more to talk about in the days to come. But makes us feel really good about what you do as a community to encourage people to work together as a team. And it's a very proud moment just being able to watch different entities in the community put their best foot forward, and these nationwide judges asking poignant questions and just getting an opportunity to answer them. So I want to thank you, and again, that invitation is for tomorrow for that watch party, and hopefully we'll have some good news for the community. But even so, it's pretty remarkable. We're the only community, only city and county. We did it together this year, but we're the only one in South Carolina to get on that finalist list. So very proud, and hopefully more information to come.
And let me add that the city made the decision that we wanted to file as a community. And the reason we did that was, number one, because we think that such applications are viewed more favorably because it shows how communities are working together, but we also want to emphasize the fact that we believe that working together as a city and county the way we do is a strength that we have that needs to be celebrated and recognized. So, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we are selected, we will be an All-American city and an All-American county, and we'll both entities will be able to claim that. So we're real proud of that, and keep your fingers crossed for Sumter, because I think we ought to be very, very proud that for 2 years in a row we've been in the last 20 out of over 500 applicants nationwide. So that is quite an accomplishment to me, but being selected would certainly be something that we could just burst our buttons with pride and move forward with even more determination to get even better. So we hope that'll happen. We have completed our regular agenda. We cannot proceed with our public hearings until 6 p.m. So I'm going to order that we stand at ease until 6 p.m., at which time we will reconvene to consider the public hearings. I'm sorry. I'm told we should have time to do the public comment segment of our agenda, which is next up. So with that, let me just say that we do have a public comment segment in our agenda. It is designed, the public comment time is primarily a time to allow citizens to comment on things that have taken place at a meeting. Obviously, the public comment time is not provided to discuss national, state, county, or personal concerns. The public comment time is not a discussion period. This is a time for council to listen to citizens. Council normally will not respond to questions during this time, but they or city staff will attempt to provide answers to any questions within a reasonable time. Only a citizen who physically resides in the city can address council at city council meetings. This means that the city must be your primary resident. Each city resident who presents to speak will be given 3 minutes to do so. City council will not allow any comment on any pending legal or law enforcement matter, nor will it allow discussion of any personnel matter. Let me also mention that this being the election season, we will not allow any campaign-like or other related sorts of presentations. If a speaker uses vulgarity or verbally attacks another person, that speaker will not be allowed to continue. The mayor who presides over meetings will enforce these rules. With that, let me open the public comment segment and ask if there is any city resident who wishes to address council. If there is, would you please come to one of the microphones and remove your mask before speaking so we can make sure we hear you. So, yes, sir, you'll be next.
Mr. Mayor, City Council.
Would you give us your name and address, please, sir?
Yeah, my name is Louis Watkins. I live in the city of Sumter. I live on Providence Street. And I'm basically commenting on the portion where the emergency, the governor's 2695 regarding the restaurants and the stipulations of anyway. Most of the legislation and the regulations, in my opinion, have excluded the consumer. The person who goes there to the restaurants and sees something that's happening. I've been in these restaurants and I've seen people not have their mask on, or they have them pulled down under their nose, and they're still exposing the virus if they have it to the food and stuff. Is there a provision, or I would like to suggest, I would say that there's a number, we should have a number or a sign, the same way they have all these signs in the restaurant telling you to put on your mask and everything. But there's no reporting process that I know of where if I see something that's happening, I can call it in. I can call it into the health department or the complaint line. So as a result, it's one-sided. Also, the consumer protection in Sumter period that I found is lacking because there's not a general complaint number where I can call if I have a health department complaint or consumer complaint that I can get some results. So my question and concern is me as a consumer, when I go to a restaurant and I see a violation of the rules and regulations, who do I contact and how can I get some results? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, right here in front.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take a few minutes and
Would you
congratulate
give us your name and,
Oh.
name and address, please, sir?
My name is Eddie Drayton, 21 Phelps Street, Sumter, South Carolina. I just want to take a minute and congratulate you on a very good tour as mayor of Sumter, South Carolina. When I walk the streets of downtown, I'm really proud of the things that you and council members over the last 3 or 4 terms have accomplished here. And I wish you well in your retirement. I hope things go well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Elaine Brunson, and I reside at 203 Council Street, which is in the city of Sumter. Today, I address the council on behalf of the newly developed Sumter Black Chamber of Commerce. As we all know, COVID has greatly affected businesses as a whole throughout the city of Sumter. In the agenda, under the old business section, I noticed that you guys have approved the community development budget. I wanted to bring to your attention the social disadvantaged group of Black and minority business owners have been suffering as a result of COVID at an alarming rate. Prior to COVID, Black-owned businesses have already been suffering, and COVID has made that rate a little higher. I wanted to know, does the community development budget or the facade grants have any set-asides or any additional funding for the social disadvantaged group of business owners in the minority and Black-owned business community that are in need currently?
Thank you, ma'am. We'll get Mr. Gaines to show you what we do on that.
All right, I appreciate your time.
And I apologize. Did everybody understand what you? Okay, I didn't. Anyone else? If you would just raise your hand. Seeing no one else, I declare the public comment segment closed, and we have 1 minute before we can move into our public hearings. And I neglected to say that the standard for public hearings is a little different than the standard for the public comments. It is possible to be a non-city resident and be allowed to address council on something like a zoning change. So I'll explain that in a little more detail in just a minute. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. And I don't have my little cheat sheet up here, so I'm going to just do this from memory. I hope I got it down after 20 years. We're going to open the public hearings, and tonight we have 3. One of them is pretty much an informational situation. The other 2 will come from the Planning Commission. And on these from the Planning Commission, I will ask Ms. Rudman as the interim planning director to present the proposal, and then council may ask them questions. After that, I will ask the applicant if he or she wishes to make a statement to council. And of course, council can ask questions of the applicant. Then I will ask in order for citizens or people who are eligible to speak to either speak for or against the proposal. Now, for the purposes of these hearings, we define a city resident as someone who either lives physically within the city as his or her primary residence, or has a financial interest in the property that is under discussion. Those are the 2 reasons you can speak. We ask that you limit yourself to no more than 3 minutes and that you not be repetitive. If you become repetitive, council reserves the right to say stop because we just need to hear it one time. And we may not make any decision on these issues tonight, but any decision that's made will be made at a public meeting. I think I covered everything under that. So with that, I'm going to open it up first and ask Chief Rourke if he would come forward and tell us about the Law Enforcement Justice Assistance Grant. And I believe this is one of those requirements under federal law for some grant money that's received.
That's correct, sir. Good evening, Mayor, member of council. Traditionally, this time of year, we receive a grant from the Edwards Byrne Memorial Justice Program grants from the federal government. And as always, it's primarily tied around technology and training. And our funding mechanism, our funding stream has decreased over the last several years. This year, our award was $22,683. What we're proposing to do is replace 10 of our in-car computers, our Panasonic Toughbook computers, which are on state contract for Ridgeland Technology. This affords the opportunity for the officers, now that we have upgraded our CAD system, which is our computer-aided dispatch, to a Zerker product, that the CAD, or all the data that's called in the 911, is pushed out to the vehicles in mobile CAD. So it lowers the number of data entry points, and it provides an opportunity for the officer to work in an area using Wi-Fi or hotspots to do the reports and remain on the road, visible to our citizens, as opposed to coming to our office. So it speeds up our process, it makes us more efficient, and that's what we're requesting to be able to do with the funding at this juncture.
Any questions of Chief Rourke? Thank you,
Yes, sir.
sir. And there's no need for council action on that. This is just the information that we're receiving.
I do think we have to have a vote.
We do?
Yes, sir. I think we do.
Okay, do we have a motion that we accept the proposal that's been submitted as to the expenditure of, yeah,
I think we do open it up for any kind of public comment,
I'm sorry.
just for record, and then the vote, like Chief said, at the end. I think it'd be good.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Does anyone wish to comment on the funds that have been received and how they're being spent? They're being spent on replacing computers that are in department vehicles, correct? And it's $2,600, is that? $26,000? $22,684. Okay, seeing no comment, does council wish to take any action at this time?
Make a motion to consider, to approve the, as presented, to purchase the computers.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Mr. Merchant, seconded by Mr. Hasty, that we approve the proposed expenditure of Justice Assistance Grant for law enforcement. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And it is approved. Next, we will move into the two reports from the Planning Commission. Ms. Rubin, first up is a proposal related to Oswego, the Oswego Highway.
Good evening, Helen Rudman for planning staff. Our first request is RZ 2009 at 99 Oswego Highway. The applicant is Abraham Bullock, who is the property owner representative. This request is to rezone approximately 3.26 acres from residential 9 to general commercial. This is the location of the property as it sits today. It's just north of apartments, and it is just south of a radio station, and directly across the street is a residential neighborhood. This is the property in the 2020 aerial photography. As you'll see, a portion of it has already developed, with better than half of it still being wooded area. It is zoned R9, but it is abutted by light industrial warehouse as well as general commercial. And historically, this property has been used as a church property, which is considered a commercial activity. The residential that's immediately adjacent to it is actually a multifamily project. This property is currently for sale, and it is under contract, which is what the impetus for this rezoning request is. If it is successfully rezoned, it is the intent to convert this from a religious use to an events facility. It is in the special flood hazard area, the AE flood zone. The buyer is aware of this, and we have had extensive discussions with them about what would be necessary to do any additional development on the property. The 2040 Comprehensive Plan does designate this as a conservation preservation area, primarily because of the presence and influence of the special flood hazard area. However, the property is already developed, so substantively, the rezoning action is not going to change the development on the site. It's pre-existing, it's already developed. It's also influenced by the suburban development planning area, which does support commercial zoning designations in the appropriate context. Planning Commission did recommend approval of this request. Although it is located in the conservation preservation area, it has been developed as a commercial site. And in addition, this site is actually adjacent to multiple commercial activities. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions of Ms. Rudman? Thank you, ma'am. Does the applicant wish to make any statement? If so, would you please come to one of the microphones and give us your name and address? Do you see any? Apparently no one wishes to speak on behalf of the applicant. Is there any city resident who qualifies to speak who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone in favor? Any such person opposed to this request? Anyone against it? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing on this proposal to be closed and ask if council wishes to take any action, which would be first reading or no action.
Move to consider first reading as presented.
Second.
Mr. Merchant moves, Mr. Hasty seconds that we give first reading to this proposal. Is the discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And it is unanimously approved. Next, we have another proposal from the Planning Commission related to the prohibited signs in our ordinance. Ms. Rubin?
OA 2001 actually addresses enforcement and penalties for prohibited signs. This is coming before council as a request that actually came from council that was forwarded to Planning Commission for consideration. Specifically, this would amend Article 1, Section D, enforcement and penalties of the city ordinance related to prohibited signs and enforcement processes. As I said, on March 3rd, this was initiated by a vote of City Council. It does add specific wording that concerns our enforcement penalties for prohibited signs. We did refer this to the Committee of the Whole at Planning Commission to discuss it in conjunction with some other potential sign code revisions. But out of that conversation, it was referred back to Planning Commission simply to move forward with the request as originally submitted to amend the enforcement and penalties provisions. When we talk about prohibited signs, these are the things that we're talking about. We're talking about signs that are inflatable, or the dancing man that you sometimes see in some communities. We're talking about signs that are stapled to telephone poles and just abandoned. The city doesn't allow feather flags or fluttering devices, and we're also talking about those 2x3 roadside signs that you see kind of put up all over on the road right of way throughout the community. There is a very specific list. We've gone through this. We're talking about anything with intermittent displays and illumination that changes more than every 2 seconds because that is a hazard to navigation. We're talking about signs that are painted on fences or power poles or vehicles that would create a sign that isn't otherwise permitted in the ordinance. We're also talking about, inflatable signs or tethered balloons, which are not permitted in the ordinance today, as well as pennants and fluttering devices. And then portable signs and sandwich board signs that are not permitted with a temporary use permit. When we say portable signs, you most commonly would hear them referred to as spider leg signs. You would see those, probably the closest community where I've seen them lately is in the Florence area. We do not allow those here in our community. Planning Commission is recommending approval of this request. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Functionally, this allows me as the zoning administrator to penalize and fine an individual who has neglected our request to remove their signs really in a repeated manner. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions of Ms. Rubin on this?
Do you, as the zoning administrator, currently have any mechanism to penalize or otherwise enforce this ordinance?
We do. But what this does, it actually allows us to have a greater fining capacity. Normally what happens when we have signs throughout the community that are not legal, the first step that we take is we reach out to the business entity or the individual that we have identified as who had put it up. We let them know that they're not legal, and we give them a time frame to remove them. By and large, that usually works. Occasionally it does not. This would actually allow us to have a more stringent penalty for that, for what I would consider repeat offenders. This wouldn't be a process that I would consider using with somebody for the first or second time that they've done this.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Helen, so we notify the person, let's say there's a real estate agent, and they put these little signs at four-way stop sign. You notify them, you give them 2 weeks, whatever, to remove them. They don't remove them. At this point, we have this will strengthen our ability to penalize them?
It would actually allow me to write them a ticket for each sign, not just the single intersection offense.
Okay.
Normally, right now, the way the regulations are written, I could write them one ticket because they're at the intersection. But the way that this proposal has been written, it actually would allow me, if there were 4 signs at the intersection, I could write them a ticket for each of those signs. Ultimately, the fine would fall to the magistrate's court to determine what that fine will be overall. But it could be upwards of $500 per ticket per violation.
Well, I'm delighted to support this. Yeah, I think we need to clean up some of our signage.
Who will prosecute on our behalf?
Usually this is a ticket that's written by the zoning enforcement officer, and it is taken to court by that officer. Occasionally, the acting zoning administrator, which in this case is currently me, also would attend if there are questions or technical issues that need to be addressed.
Is the appeal process still, would then go to the circuit court?
Yeah, it follows the standard magistrate's court procedures.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Ms. Rubin? Thank you. Let me just ask, is there any, there is no applicant, of course, here, unless it's the city council. Is there any person who satisfies the qualifications for speaking who would like to speak in favor of this? That would be any person living in the city who would like to speak in favor. Yes, sir.
Again, my name is Louis Watkins, and a question that I have in my mind is that when the application is taken out for the permit to put up these signs, is there a bond that has to be, or the application fee? Do they have to pay a fee in order to get permission? And if that's the case, if it's a refundable fee or bond, why can't it be held until the signs are taken up, or if the signs are not removed, then they forfeit the bond?
Thanks, sir.
The specific category of signs that this pertains to are signs that are not allowed under the ordinance, so there's no permit to issue. They're technically, for lack of a better word to describe it, they're illegal signs that we can't permit. Other signs that do have temporary use permits, they come in, they get an application fee, they pay it, it's renewed annually, and it's usually a sign that they'll put right up in front of their business. The types of signs that we're discussing with this particular amendment is really, for the most part, what you see in the bottom corner, it's this. These are probably the type of sign clutter that we see throughout the community the most, are these 2x3 signs that are stuck in the road right of way that are either advertising a business every 10 feet, A good example would be the Obamacare signs when they went out, when you saw them at every intersection, up down every street corner. Those are the types of signs that this would address. It wouldn't be for any sign that you can actually obtain a legal permit for.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone wishing to speak against this? Anyone opposed?
Hi, my name is Lade Brunson. I'm at 203 Council Street. And I was just wondering, isn't it more cost effective and if it's possible to have the city, the sanitation department just pick the signs up?
Thank you,
Like
ma'am.
if they're on a light pole, couldn't sanitation just pull them all down?
Thank you, ma'am. I guess that would be a question of opinion. You know, sanitation workers are generally picking up things from houses and not stopping for purposes like that, and there are questions of property rights and things like that, I assume, that are involved with it. But this is the typical way of dealing with it, is my understanding. This ordinance was prepared by the city attorney.
Correct.
Anyone else against? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. Does council wish to take any action?
I move that we support AO 20, approve AO 2001, enforcement of and penalties of signs.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Mr. Corley and seconded by Mr. Hasty. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved unanimously. It's given first reading unanimously. There will be a second reading in our next meeting or proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I believe we have completed our regular agenda. But city manager, we need to have an executive session for any reason? Anything else we need to bring up at this time? If there's not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Hasty moves, Mr. Lowry seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, and we're adjourned.
Brother, you getting a little slow.